Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football for another week. What a week it was. Week three around the National Football League. It's crazy week. I called it Separation Sunday, where we started seeing the contenders and some of the pretenders kind of tell us who they are. And, we got lots to talk about tonight. I'll bring in my buddy Ryan Neff to talk about it. And, Ryan, it was crazy week. You had some close games. You had a couple close games like the Indianapolis Colts and the Ravens playing in the fog and the rain, and that was a close one in overtime win for the Colts. And then, Ryan, we can't talk about this week without talking about the blowouts. But first and foremost, are you a Taylor Swift fan?
I'm not a Swiftie. I don't know what they're gonna call it. I don't know whatever gonna combine the names now or whatnot. Now the Eagles have their own version of Kelsey Swift. It's Jason Kelsey and DeAndre Swift. Um, so not I've never been a Swiftie. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't think I'll ever get it. So I hope he knows what he's doing. Um, we all saw what happened with Tony Romo and Jessica Simpson. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens and what transpires. I hope it's not too much of a distraction, but we'll see going forward.
Yeah, and you had Aaron Rodgers, and I think Olivia Munn, and you always see these. Look at Andre Rison and the late Lisa Left Eye
Yep.
Lopez. She burned his house down. So these football players and celebrities, uh, they always say all actors want to be athletes and all athletes want to be actors and rappers, whatever it is. But it's that cross section, and everybody's talking about it. I heard from all types of people that are not football fans, and they all kept saying to me, "Oh, did you see her in the press box with his mother? Yeah, she's pounding on the glass and everything." But it's a great story. But that's National Enquirer stuff, and I tend to think next month she'll be on to another John Mayer type.
This this is just new material for her next album.
And on the field, man, these games were incredible. Obviously, we kind of start a little locally, and where I am, I'm in the Philadelphia area, and I know some of our listeners are in the Tampa Bay area. Last night, the Eagles go to 3-0. They're only one of three teams now that are 3-0 with a 25-11 victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are now 2-1. Um, when I looked at this game, it was a situation where another one where the Eagles get the win, but we start talking about style points and everything. Luckily, that doesn't matter in the National Football League. They get their W, but they still have some things to work on. I know Jalen Hurts was saying that he had flu-like symptoms before the game started, but I thought they did the right thing in terms of leaning on DeAndre Swift and that running game that the Eagles are becoming pretty vaunted right now at this point, behind the best offensive line in football. 201 total rushing yards in this game, and another great game for Swift. But the Eagles still have some work to do, and they got a big game coming up this week against Washington, who will kind of talk about Washington and a lot of these other teams that were 2-0 that didn't get it done. But first, Ryan, what did you think in terms of the Eagles Tampa Bay game last night?
Well, I mean, I said on the pregame show the other day that one of the two things was going to have to give. Traditionally, Tampa Bay is great against the run, and they broke through that wall in a big way. And on the flip side of it, how would the secondary of Philadelphia fare against the receivers at Tampa Bay? Well, Tampa Bay, when you're only rushing the ball 17 times for 41 yards and you're throwing the ball, they only threw the ball 25 times.
Yeah.
They had nothing going on either account. To only rush the ball 17 times, I mean, Rashad White had 14 carries for 38 yards total. Baker Mayfield, one rush for 2 yards, and Sean Tucker, 2 carries for 1 yard. When you're that transparent and you cannot run the football, you're going to have a tough time uh, a tough sledding of it. As far as Jalen Hurts goes, they talked about the flu symptoms. He did throw 2 picks. You
Yeah.
know, for the Eagles last night, it was run the damn ball and play good defense. And they stopped the run. They stuffed it. Tampa Bay had no answer for it, and they came away with the W. Now, it'll be interesting to see going forward. Is Philadelphia going to continue to, lean on that run game time and time again and sort of like, take the pressure off of Hurts? And for God's sakes, would somebody devise something to stop that quarterback sneak? Please, just stuff 11 guys above the center.
Yeah, Ryan, I've said it over and over again. Hurts is running the ball way too much, and he had 10 rushes for 28 yards and 1 touchdown, and that many tush pushes. I wrote in my notes, and it's a situation where yes, it's nice, and that scrum can get somebody hurt. You've seen the guys diving at each other's legs, and eventually, I think somebody's going to devise a way to stop it. Obviously, with the way the Eagles' interior is one of the best in the league in terms of their offensive line, and they're going to utilize it over and over again. Brian Johnson, their offense coordinator, as you're saying, he's starting to, I think, get a rhythm and kind of understand this group. And in terms of they have a dominant line, that's what Howie Roseman has done. He's built a great offensive line, great defensive line, and they're kind of leaning on an identity. I talked about 201 total rushing yards. Swift had 16 rushes for 130 yards, and they're just big gaping holes out there. But in terms of the passing game, I still believe that Hurts is forcing the football too much. AJ Brown last week got in his face kind of on the sidelines, and you saw they made sure to get him the football. He had 14 targets, 9 catches for 131 yards. Had a pretty good game, and it's the Eagles team. They're they're stacking W's, and that's what you want. So it's going to be interesting to see if that continues. But those 2 interceptions do alarm you. What I'm thinking now is eventually somebody, as you're saying, is going to make Hurts try to beat them, and that's kind of what Kansas City did, and that's what Tampa Bay did a couple years ago in the playoffs. So a good win for the Eagles. The Eagles next have Washington at home, then they go to the Rams, at the Jets, then they play Miami, at Washington again, Dallas, and then they have their bye, and then Tampa Bay. Look at the other side of that real quick. I kind of Baker's Baker, and and he kind of reared his head in this one. He had an interception. He was sacked twice. Uh, Only threw for 146 yards, as you said, and you could see the Eagles were just not afraid of him. He did get the ball to Mike Evans here and there. Evans had 10 targets, but he had 5 catches and 60 some yards, and he had too many drops in this game. So Tampa Bay got off to a good start with 2 wins, but I think they're going to kind of head back to the pack a little bit, and their team, Todd Bowles, struggling. He's on the hot seat for his job. It's going to be interesting to see if they can compete for that NFC South division. They're at New Orleans this week. Then they have their bye to kind of try to get healthy. I know they need guys like Carlton Davis back. But solid win for the Eagles. But as we always say, on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like the Buccaneers, the lack of a running game is going to hurt them as the year goes on. They don't have Leonard Fournette anymore. So I just, you can't put the onus on Baker all the time to throw the
Yeah.
football because he's proven time and time again he can't get it done. Again, you've got Evans, you've got Godwin, you got the tight end Otten, who they didn't utilize yesterday. But if you're only rushing the ball 17 times a game for 41 yards, you're not going to win many games going forward.
Yeah, those 41 yards, we point that out, and that just you have to establish the run, establish the tempo of the game, and the Eagles possessed the ball for 38, almost 39 minutes of the game, only for like 21 for Tampa Bay. So that shows you how the run just sets everything up, and I can't leave this game without giving my kudos to the defensive line of Philadelphia Eagles. They are a very dangerous group, in particular. First round draft pick Jalen Carter looks like an absolute steal for them. A guy that he's almost like Warren Sapp coming out of college, where he had some baggage and people stayed away from him. And then Tampa Bay kind of was like, "Ooh, look what we found." And I think that's what the Eagles are saying. They get him, I think, in the 8th pick or so. And He's just a dominant defensive lineman, able to shoot the gap. And then you put Jordan Davis next to him. Now he's playing like a true first rounder, taking up a lot of space in the middle. And they've even rejuvenated Fletcher Cox, and that defensive line is a very scary group. And we'll see how they handle going against Washington.
Yeah, it's but at some point, you know, someone's going to stuff their run at some point. Someone will devise a plan, and they'll try and force Jalen Hurts to beat them at some point along the season. But look, if the running game is working like that, and you're opening holes like that, and it can take all the pressure off Hurts. Now again, the one interception that Hurts threw, it just seems like there was miscommunication between him and the receiver. Um, so they'll have to get that worked out. But I mean, if you can run the ball that effectively and control the clock like that, and you can demoralize the defense, I think that the Eagles will continue to do that. Of course, AJ Brown had the big game yesterday. Devontae Smith kind of quiet, but at some point they're going to have some sort of balance.
Yeah.
And again, it's the running game. It's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work until it's not going to work anymore, and then you're going to have to figure something else balance wise.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Eagles can continue. We know that teams that start 3-0 have a 75% chance of making the playoffs since 1990. So they seem to be in good shape, and we'll segue into another game that I think they're in good shape too. They're a 3-0 team. Everybody's talking about this one. The Miami Dolphins just waxed the Denver Broncos 70-20. And in this one, their old ball boy, McDaniel, who's now the head coach of the Dolphins, gets his revenge. And it was just astronomical the amount of points that were put up in this game. Tua Tagovailoa, 23 of 26, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns. You had Devon Achane, the rookie running back, 18 rushes, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the points were just plentiful. And it was interesting to me. They even got Robbie Chosen, the old former Robbie Anderson, involved late. They got a huge lead, and they're throwing a bomb in this game that just. I mean, they destroyed the over in this one, and you could tell they wanted to humiliate Sean Payton. I think a lot of this has to do with Sean Payton and what he said and turning to Nathaniel Hackett and questioning his coaching style, and they wanted to embarrass him, and that's what they did in this game. And Miami is looking quite dangerous. Everybody wanted to see the Jets in prime time in all these games, and now that Aaron Rodgers hurt, maybe they could kind of give these games to the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, 726 yards of total offense for the Dolphins. I mean, that
Wow.
should not happen in the NFL. And Denver looked clueless. Um, we had Miami rushing the ball 43 times for 350 yards. I don't think I've ever seen that. And they also, let's see, Tua, 23 of 26, 309 yards and 4 touchdowns. Even Mike White got in on the act with 2 of 2 for 67 yards and a touchdown. Denver was just outclassed. And you know what? I'm tired of Sean Payton's idiocy. He's deflecting the blame on everybody else. He talked smack about Nathaniel Hackett. He talked about Tua in September of last year, saying he would be benched. And then in the post-game press conference yesterday, he was asked directly about the performance, and he got snippy and he got short. And look, man,
Very nasty.
you came out and said all your stuff, and you're gonna be short with reporters and stuff like that. Instead of taking the Deion Sanders route and saying, "Look, we got our butts kicked. There's no excuses." Deion didn't point the blame anywhere. He said it starts with the coaches and it filters on down, and you can't blame Russ. You got to start with you, and you're 0-3, and you didn't expect it, and now you're in this position, and now what are you going to do? And I'm tired of his shenanigans, and we'll see how they handle it going forward. And they play Chicago this coming week, which it might be the first 1 to 10 points might win that game.
Yeah, somebody's always got to go, and that's the bad of post 0-3, and we know 0-3 teams. Your season is basically on life support. Only 6 teams. since 1980 have made the playoffs after starting 0-3. The last one was the 2018 Houston Texans, and it's an uphill climb from here. And I'm with you because Sean Payton, they traded for him with the Saints, and they thought they were getting this big pedigree with him coming in, and it's just not working. But they're stuck with him, and he can say Russ this and that. Russell Wilson, 23 of 38, 306 yards and one touchdown. He was competing in this game, but obviously Miami, they look like the greatest show on turf right now. They're the fourth team in NFL history to score 70 points. The first time since 1966, 57 years since they've done that. And it was just an incredible performance. They recorded 1,651 total yards of offense this season to surpass the 2011 New England Patriots. So for the most through 3 games. So this team is looking like a juggernaut, and they've just been dominant. Now, the good thing is we'll talk about the upcoming games in week 4, but one of them definitely I've highlighted is Miami going to Buffalo. We're really going to see, can this team get it done? And then, as you said, Denver, they're going to Chicago, desperation mode, and we'll see if they're able to get it done. So, you had 2 teams going in opposite directions. What a big score that was. Another game I want to touch on is Indianapolis going to Baltimore, winning in overtime 22-19. And the star of this game, and he actually got my game ball this week. I get one out each week. It's kicker Matt Gay, 5 for 5, including a 53-yard game winner. And he's the first player in NFL history to have 4 field goals of 50-yard plus. And the weather conditions were terrible in this one. I watched a lot of this game. And, Gardner Minshew, he gets it done. He was sacked 5 times, but he just kept playing throughout this one. I know Baltimore's going to say they had 7 starters out to injury in this one, and Lamar Jackson played kind of heroic at points. But you have to hand it to the Colts. Stepping forward, they're now 2-1, and they lead the AFC South.
Yeah, I thought the game was equally matched. I mean, throughout, you talk about Matt Gay with the 5 field goals, and I always say, fear the min stash, because Gardner Minshew, I always say, fear the min stash, because is he going to wow you? No. Is he a serviceable quarterback? Yes. Both teams tried to run the ball. Both teams were affected, but it just sort of had that feel whoever had the ball last just was going to will their way to the win. We went into overtime. I thought this was going to end in a tie for a while, and Baltimore had their opportunities, and Baltimore, this great defensive team in Baltimore, but it was in the Colts defense that came to play and that kept them in the game. And again, we always talk about it. You allow teams just to hang around that you're supposed to beat at home, and that's what Indianapolis did, and they came away with the win. And Lamar, 22 of 31 for a pedestrian, 202 passing yards. Obviously, he ran the ball for 14 times for 101 yards. But again, and I've said this the last couple of years, you can't expect your quarterback to be your leading rusher game in and game out. They have Gus Edwards. I know Justice Hill, I think, was hurt. But they're going to have to, again, another team that's going to have to figure out something in the running game. Gus Edwards had 11 carries for 51 yards. Melvin Gordon, 10 carries for 32 yards. I thought they got away from the run a little bit too much in that particular game. And, Indianapolis made them pay for it.
Yeah, and you're talking about in the weather conditions. You thought maybe, they should run it more. And you talk about the backs that they're stuck with now. Melvin Gordon, he just does not have much left. And, I'm just thinking, all right, don't fumble the ball, and that'll help your team. But, they need to do more in terms of the passing game. Isaiah Likely had a very bad drop in overtime that could probably set them up for a game winner. And Zay Flowers, yes, he had 8 catches for 48 yards. But that's their leading guy, and they have to get the ball into their receivers' hands more. And as you're saying, the offense, they thought Todd Monken was going to bring more to the table, and it just looks like the same old offense where it's just Lamar left, Lamar right, and just on a wing and a prayer. After they scored their touchdown on the first possession, they went 6 possessions after that without scoring, 4 punts and 2 lost fumbles. So, the Ravens, they're 2-1, they're in the mix. in this tough AFC North where all the teams are kind of bunched up at 2-1, and we'll see where they go from there. The Ravens actually are at Cleveland this week, then they're at Pittsburgh, at Tennessee. So that's going to kind of tell us in the next couple of weeks who they are. And then Indianapolis, we'll see if they're able to get Anthony Richardson back, their dynamic young quarterback. Yes, you like to stash and Minshew coming in there for a game or two, but week in and week out starter, he's not. So they host the Rams, then Tennessee, and then they're at Jacksonville for a huge key game. And then speaking of, another team just down the Beltway, Buffalo went into Washington and they just waxed the Commanders. I mean, 37-3. And in this one, you saw Sam Howell, his deficiency. He's 19 of 29, 170 yards, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he was sacked 9 times. So it was a dominant win by Buffalo, and they're starting to reassert themselves, showing that they are a contender in the AFC. And then you got to kind of wonder about this Washington team, if they may be one of those pretenders that I talked about when I first opened the show.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn the ball over that many times. You can't allow 9 sacks. You're not going to win too many football games like that. Josh Allen really didn't have to do too much. He was 20 of 32, 218 yards, touchdown and a pick. James Cook was the leading rusher. He seems to be like the go-to guy in the running game now. Take a little bit of pressure off of Allen. 15 carries, 98 yards. Overall, they ran the ball 33 times for 168 yards. Stephon Diggs went off like he normally does. The only, and the Bills' defense is dominant. They just are. They have like a top 5, top 8 defense. The only thing that concerns me about Buffalo going forward is who's that other receiver that's going to step up to complement Diggs. Gabe Davis, the last couple years, we thought he was going to be the guy. He shows flashes, and then he disappears. Diggs led with 8 catches for 111 yards, and there were 1, 2, 3 other guys with only 2 catches. Those were the nearest guys. So, who on that team is going to step up in the receiving core other than Diggs? I thought maybe they'd utilize the tight ends a little bit more. You've got the kid Kincaid and you've got Knox, and I'm surprised that they haven't gone to those 2 guys a little bit more. But dominating performance, and it sets up a battle next week. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ken Dorsey's their offense coordinator, and I think, he couldn't really pick up from Brian Daboll where he left off. He's just not in sync with this team the way that he needs to be, and in terms of the offense, and yes, they put up some big points. And the good thing I do see him doing is calling less design runs for Josh Allen. He's only had about 4 runs per game, which probably is where he needs to be, rather than that 10-plus mark where he's at getting hit way too much. And you're right about Buffalo. That defense has A.J. Epinesa and some other guys, Micah Hyde, trying to hold it down right now until they can get Von Miller back. And Ed Oliver, I like him in the middle. And they have some nice pieces there. Sean McDermott has taken over in charge of that defense, and they've turned it around after losing in week 1 in a surprise to the Jets. We'll see where they go from here. Obviously, you talked about coming up. They got the Dolphins, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. That's a huge game where they host Miami. Miami's coming in. Then you have Jacksonville, who also is a playoff contender. It's a home game, and then they have a home game against the Giants, and then they're at the Patriots. So those are the big games coming up for Buffalo, and then we'll see if they're able to keep it going. I thought they did a great job in terms of third downs. They were 9 of 15 on third downs. That was Washington's Achilles heel. They were only 1 of 9 on third downs in this game. So Washington has to pick up the pieces very quickly. They're here where I am in Philadelphia, and already the Eagles are licking their chops thinking they're going to get another big W. But the thing is, they have to be wary, because we know last year in week 10 that the Washington team ended their undefeated season. So Washington at Philadelphia, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, you're going from one top defense to another top defense, and you can't have that kind of performance against the Eagles that you just did against the Bills, because if you do, you're going to get taken behind the woodshed again. And I'm sure it will be a point of reference this week to Sam Howell. Just take care of the damn football. Just don't turn it over. If it's not there, get rid of it. Don't try and force it. And he did a lot of that on Sunday, and he can't do that again, or they're going to be staring at 2-2 in the face.
Yeah, and he won my lackey this week. So I give a game ball each week, and I give a lackey. And unfortunately, Sam Howell, you were my lackey this week with that terrible performance. Hopefully, the young guy can turn it around. And he does have some nice pieces with Brian Robinson and the other back that they have there, and Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, the tight end. So they have the pieces in place, and Washington should lean on that defense. Their defensive line is one of the best out there in terms of stopping the run and getting after the quarterback. So you have Chase Young and Payne and Allen. They have a lot on that defense for Jack Del Rio, and we'll see if they're able to get it going here in Philadelphia. Now, another NFC East team that really needs to get it going, and I think they got caught with their pants down. They kind of just thought they'd roll the ball out there, and the other team would quit. And because they were the big boys on the block, they scored 70 points and only they gave up 10 their first two games. I'm talking about the Dallas Cowboys, who rolled into Arizona and thought they had an easy W against the Cardinals, who we kept saying they're one of the worst teams in the league, and Josh Dobbs, he's nothing special. This would be easy money for Dallas. Well, I think Dallas may have they weren't ready. And next thing you know, they're losing 28-16 on the road. This is probably one of the biggest upsets of the season so far. And Dallas is already, you're hearing rumblings that the locker room, they'd be fighting with each other. And is Dak the right guy, et cetera, et cetera. So, Ryan, what did you think about this big upset?
It's the same old song and dance. It's year in and year out. The game they're supposed to win, and they look like hell, and they lose. And then they're in games where they're supposed to lose, and they put together top-notch performances. It's just the inconsistency. People can blame Dak on the interception, all they want to. Were they going to go in for a score and really tighten the game up? Yes, but look, it's on everybody. You can blame Dak for the pick. I get it. He makes mistakes. This is his MO. But they were and if you look at the stats, this game was equal. It's just one team wanted it more. And if you want to get to the next level as an organization, these are the kinds of games you cannot lose. And I'm going to say this to all my former Cowboy brethren, because I used to be a Cowboys fan until I got tired of the owner's BS. Look, until that man, and I don't wish anything bad on him, and I've said this on Broad Street South before, and I'm looking into the camera, Jerry, if you really care about Cowboys Nation, either relinquish control to your son or sell the damn team.
Yeah.
Because as long as he is the owner and he has his hand in every cookie jar, this is what it's going to continue to be. I've said it year in and year out, and I'll throw this stat out again. Since the Dallas Cowboys last won the Super Bowl in 95-96, there's only 3 teams plus Dallas that have not made the Super Bowl from the NFC. Detroit,
Yeah.
Minnesota, Washington, and Dallas. Detroit's never been to a Super Bowl. Minnesota hasn't been there since 76, 77. And the Redskins the Commanders, Redskins, whatever the hell they call them,
Yeah.
they haven't been there since 91, 92. That is the level that this organization has sunk to under
Yeah.
Jerry Jones' leadership.
And you're right. It's all about him, and the biggest problem, Ryan, is, and I've been saying this for years too. He's not just the owner; he has the gall to list himself as the general manager. So, I mean, he's the architect of this team. He needs to relinquish control of the team. I think Parcells, he did for a little bit. He let Parcells kind of run everything, and that didn't work out. With Jimmy Johnson, obviously he let him do it, and then there was egos butting heads, and I think that's the biggest thing with this guy. And you're talking about an 80-year-old plus guy, and he's getting up there in age, and football is a 24/7 job. Especially for the general manager position. You got to build the team. You got to do so much. And I know his son Steven is trying to mitigate this and be involved a little bit. But in the end, he's always telling him, this is my team. And I always tell this story when I was covering Eagles games. I'll never forget it. The Eagles and Dallas played this really great game, back and forth game. Romo played well, and Donovan played pretty good. And so I said, I'm going to go into the Dallas locker room after the game, and who talks? No, the cameras. He pushes Romo out the way, and Jerry Jones is in the middle of the locker room talking about the game. Well, this is what happened, and we're all looking at each other. All us media types were like, "Are you kidding me? You didn't play in the game. You were in the owner's box or wherever you were, and these guys were out there and they played a hard game, and we kind of want to get the nitty gritty, and it's all about you, and you have to be front and center." So I totally agree with you in terms of his face of the team. And yes, he's done a great job building a brand. Obviously, we know they are the richest NFL franchise, and their marketing and their stadium is above everyone else. But in terms of football, he's just, the game has passed him by. And this team that he's built, he's got some problems because the Cardinals ran 21 times for 207 yards. They ran that ball down their throat. And then conversely, another big problem, and I'll let you jump in here, is they had 13 penalties in this game. So they kept shooting themselves in the foot, and they thought, okay, yes, it's 21-10 at halftime, but we'll be able to turn this around. But they just couldn't because, the mistake after mistake after mistake.
Yeah, you talk about the penalties. It was a big thing last year in the preseason. Oh, we're not going to get penalized as much. And, I saw something on the screen that said, does McCarthy need to take some of the blame? Well, it's you can. It's an organizational thing. Yes, you can blame McCarthy in some aspects of it. Yes, he went to a Super Bowl. Yes, he won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. But what has he done since then? It was a power struggle with Rodgers and McCarthy in Green Bay, and obviously McCarthy was the goat or scapegoat, and he left and whatnot. But look, I've said this for the last 20 some odd years. When Jimmy Johnson got all the credit for winning those Super Bowls and putting that roster together, Jerry Jones couldn't stand it. He got sick of it. He couldn't take it. And he swore up and down he would never let that happen again. Even when Bill Parcells was the coach, Jerry still had his hands in the cookie jar. And Bill Parcells got sick of it after 3 years.
Yeah.
What does, and the Dallas Cowboys are like acid reflux, okay? And the fans are, the fans are like acid reflux, and the Cowboys are like a piece of pizza. So why would you want to go and eat the piece of pizza when you know it's going to continuously give you acid reflux?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, and again, I don't wish anything bad on the man, but Jerry, for God's sakes, Tex Schramm is rolling around in his grave. Gil Brandt is rolling around in his grave. Tom Landry is rolling around in his grave, and Jimmy Johnson's laughing at you because you're right. The game has passed him by. The Steelers have had 3 head coaches in their history, Lloyd. 3 head coaches. Look at the success that they've had. The Packers, continued success. You look at the Broncos all those years, continued success. Why? Because the owners hire top-notch football people to do what they're supposed to do, and they stay out of the mix. They just do. And Jerry will never, ever do it. And it's just going to be, it's like Groundhog Day, the movie.
And he had Jason Garrett there, and that was his puppet coach. He listened to him for so many years, kept him around, and they'd always lose in the first round, typically at home, to the Niners would beat them at home. So, it's unfortunate, but it's funny. I have a lot of, in the Philadelphia area, there's a lot of Cowboys fans still, and they always, this is a time of year where they're building, and Thanksgiving, they'll all be yucking it up and jumping into the Salvation Army kettle and everything. But we know how this story ends at the end of the season, and we'll see if they're able to turn it around and make me eat crow. But when you look at Dallas, they're at New England. They have New England. Then they're at San Francisco, which is a huge game, and I have a feeling, they may get smacked around there. Then they're at the Chargers. They finally get their bye, and then they have the Rams at Philadelphia. So They have a lot going on, and we'll see if they're able to turn this around. But it's just so funny because the chests were puffed out, and you're like, "We're going to Vegas, baby, and we're going to be in the Super Bowl." And now it's like, "Wow, we lost to the Cardinals. What do we do now?" And then the scrappy Cardinals, they're going to San Francisco. We'll see if they're able to keep getting their respect. You also have to tip your cap a little to Josh Dobbs, 17 to 21, 189 yards and one touchdown. So good effort by the Cardinals, but the story's all about how Dallas fell apart in that game. Moving on to our next one, we started the show off with talking about this game in particular, the paparazzi around it, Taylor Swift being in the house and everything. But it was just a totally dominant performance by the Kansas City Chiefs. I on another show I was on, I was telling my host Rich that the Chiefs were going to get that 40 burger, and they sure did. They almost got it in the first half. They put 34 points up in the first half, 34-0, and it's just a laugher. As Patrick Mahomes tweaked his ankle a little bit, he's going to be okay, but he played really well, 24 of 33, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he got his man Kelsey his touchdown in front of his girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought that the Chiefs, okay, Dolphins, hold my beer because we're going to score 72. You know what I mean? That's what I thought it was headed, but the Chiefs backed off a little bit. But yeah, I was hoping as a Chiefs fan here that I was hoping that the Mahomes thing wasn't too serious with his ankle because I thought that it was going to be again. Turns out he's going to be okay, but yeah, they finally put together the performance that we thought we were going to see in the first 2 games. It's taken a little bit to gel. They've put together that performance. Isaiah Pacheco, I mean, they ran the ball collectively 37 times for 153 yards, which is an encouraging sign because the first 2 games, the run game was kind of iffy. Pacheco ran for 62, 15 carries. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 15 carries for 55 yards. They both had touchdowns. So, and Jerick McKinnon had 2 receiving touchdowns. And like you said, he was spreading the ball around like he normally does, Mahomes. Again, an all-around performance. The defense is gelling. They're stepping up to the plate. And I said preseason, last year the offense carried them. This year, I think the defense is going to have to step up, and they have. The first game they played well enough to win. The second game they shut the Jags down. And I mean, what are you going to say about the Bears? I know it's the Bears, but this is the kind of effort that can propel you to a run of wins. And I think they'll be able to do it. They know what they have to do. I mean, they're 2-1 now. The Chargers, big win for the Chargers this weekend, but the Broncos are, the Raiders. They're a mess right now, and we'll just have to see going. They're the class of the AFC West. They just need to take care of business.
Yeah, and when you look at this, some side notes on this game. Andy Reid gets to 271 wins to pass Tom Landry for 4th all time. He's chasing Don Shula at 347. And so we'll see how long Andy hangs around. Mahomes was making a joke, he needs to hang around a lot longer and we can get this thing done. Belichick's right there with 330 wins. So he's trying to catch Don Shula, and we'll see how that goes. The other side of it is as well, it's interesting. They finally started calling Jawan Taylor the offensive lineman that was lying. What was it, 5 times last week and 2 times this week for illegal formation? So they took him out. Andy Reid kind of, took him aside, put his arm around him, said, "Look, you're gonna have to watch. They're on you now. You got to watch this." And I think that young man will kind of grow from this. Mahomes, fastest guy to 25,000 yards. He does it in only 83 games, and we're looking at one of the all-time greats here. And I think he's just going to get better now. The other side of this game, we got to talk about this. I think we found our coach that's probably going to be let go first. This Bears team is an absolute disaster. Justin Fields, 11 of 22 for 99 yards and 1 touchdown. Another team, they can't run the ball either. Fields he led them with 11 rushes for 47 yards. Had nothing else there. He had guys dropping passes all over the place. I mean, it was just an ugly disaster. Obviously, their defensive coordinator, Alan Williams, he resigned, under strange circumstances earlier in the week. Some people are saying it's family stuff. Some people are saying it's other things. We're really not sure. We're going to have to see how that shakes out. But this Bears staff is a mess. And, it's all going to fall back on Matt Eberflus, their head coach, and Ryan Poles, their general manager. And right now, Luke Getsy, their offensive coordinator, he may be in trouble too. So we'll see where this team goes. They play Denver this week, obviously, and somebody's got to go. Somebody's got to win it. Maybe it'll be a tie, and neither of them still have a win. And then we look at the Chiefs. They're at the Jets, which that game doesn't have the panache that it has earlier in the season when Rodgers was there. Then they're at Minnesota, Denver, Chargers, and then at Denver, Miami, which will be a real fun track meet to see. They have their bye, and then Philadelphia.
Yeah, and you're talking about the Bears. Look, they have not done Justin Fields any justice with the talent that they put around him. David Montgomery saw what was coming. He wanted out. I know they've got Herbert as a running back. They've got Rashawn Johnson, but I mean, come on. DJ Moore they got, but he's not scaring anybody. Cole Kmet's not scaring anybody. Chase Claypool, we know all the friction there. They don't have the material around Justin Fields. And much in the same way as I think with Zach Wilson, before you damage this kid for life, they need to move on from the Justin Fields experiment because they're not going to get the talent around him. So they should just move on from him, try and get what you can for him. And, like the same thing with Zach Wilson. People are piling on Zach Wilson left and right. And before you damage this kid to the point where, something bad might happen because of his psyche, they need to do something there as well. Because, again, when they asked Robert Salah the question about Zach Wilson, he did his best John Fetterman impression. He was stumbling all over the place because he didn't know what to say. And, we saw the discontent on the sideline, Lloyd, during the game. People pointing fingers and stuff like that. And let me just say this, and then I'll shut up.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers, I know you got hurt. I know you had surgery a couple of weeks ago. If you have time to go on the Pat McAfee show every freaking Monday, then you have the ability and the time to be with your teammates on the sideline because Zach Wilson could have used you on the sideline the last couple weeks. I know he's hurt. I know he's going through rehab. Now, supposedly he's going to be at the Kansas City game in New York. He's going to show up for that. But he's been through stuff like this before, and it would just have been nice to have him on the sideline to pull Zach off to the side and say, hey, just calm down. What are you seeing? And I'll shut up now because
somebody's got to do something to help this team. This was a game that I know our producer Angel was saying, "Oh, you don't want to talk about it," but yeah, we got to talk about this one because the Jets have lost 15 straight times to Belichick in the Patriots. So they've just dominated them in terms of year after year, and yes, it was 15-10 and. The Patriots just always kind of seemed in control of this game, and it was due to their defense, really. Matthew Judon, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and he had the safety where I'm not sure if Wilson they stuffed him in the end zone, and Jabril Peppers 7 tackles, and the Patriots just needed a win. They found a way to get it done, but you talk about the other side of it. This Jets team's in a lot of trouble. Wilson, 8 of 36, 157 yards, sacked 3 times. He's just holding the ball way too long. And then the key stat to me, Ryan, was the Jets were 2 of 14 on third downs. That just shows you their inefficiency of this team. And the season, I think, is just going to get longer for them. They obviously have KC coming in, and I know Pat Mahomes licking his chops.
22 rushes for 38 yards.
Yeah,
you got Breece Hall, you have Dalvin Cook, you've got a slew of running backs, and for the love of God, can you just run the football? Take some pressure off the kid.
Yes.
Yeah, 18 to 36, 157. He didn't throw a pick. He looks confused. You're right. He holds on to the ball long, But when you have that much pressure on you and you feel like you have to do something play in and play out, you can see it transpiring throughout the game. He just, the game is not slowing down for him. But when you can only run the ball 22 times for 38 yards, which is a 1.7 average, what do you think defenses are going to do? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, their line is Dwayne Brown. He's on IR now, and they've just got a mess up front. Mekhi Becton is not the guy they thought he was when they drafted him. He's had way too many injuries, and that line's a mess. And it's a shame because their defense is one of the best in the league, and they did a great job in terms of competing in this game, the Jets defense. But offensively, they're really challenged, and this thing's going to only get uglier because you saw Garrett Wilson, who had 5 catches on 9 targets. Just he was all over Wilson on the sidelines, and it's just going to get uglier. And you know what their answer was to all this? They signed Trevor Siemian to their practice squad today, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's really going to help you. So the Jets, like I said, they have a tough way to go. They have Kansas City, they're at Denver, then they have Philadelphia coming in, and they finally get their bye. Now we'll see if this game is able to kind of spur the Patriots back into the race. They're 1-2 now. I'm not the biggest Mac Jones fans now. They're facing Dallas. We'll see how that turns out, and then they have New Orleans at the Raiders and then Buffalo. So these teams, they were fun to watch, and in our last segment here, we'll go to talk about the upcoming week. I always like to do my remix review, and then we kind of look forward to the next week and start talking about the games in the upcoming window. Thursday night, this is an interesting one because you have the Detroit Lions, who's 2-1, and they're at the Green Bay Packers, who we didn't review the game, but man, Green Bay pulled a rabbit out of their hat. Jordan Love wins the game 18-17 in overtime. They had some head scratching moments, I thought, where they went for 2, where they didn't need to and things. But, Green Bay may have something, and Rashawn Gary is playing very well on defense for them. He's their sack man. So this game is I don't have the line yet, but what do you think about this one? I'll look up the line while you start talking about it.
Again, it's Detroit with all the hype preseason. They had a big win this weekend. Of course, Green Bay pulled the rabbit out of the hat. Detroit, again, you still have to prove it to me. I know they will probably be a pick'em game somewhere in there.
Green Bay is a 1.5 favorite, and the over/under is 45.5.
Somebody knows something. So, again, until Detroit proves it to me on the field, I'll say Green Bay wins this close.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people don't give Jared Goff respect, and they went in there last year, and let's not forget they won that game. Now, a big key to that win last year was the way Jamal Williams played. He's now in with the Saints, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Lions can generate that Aaron Glenn could get that defense up because they played very well last week, and we'll see how they do. But I tend to agree with you that I think the Packers kind of win this one. They always beat the Lions in Lambeau for so many years. The Lions broke that streak last year, but I think Jordan Love is playing at a pretty high level. It'll be interesting to see once he gets Christian Watson back and Biakhiari. He was missing a lot of pieces, and they found a way to win. So, good team win for them. The next game I want to kind of profile is the Miami Dolphins, 3-0, and they're at the Buffalo Bills. And this is a huge game because, this is a division leader type game, and you want to see if the Dolphins can live up to all the hype. They scored 70 points, but Buffalo's defense, as we talk about, is starting to rejuvenate itself on Sean McDermott. What do you think about this game?
This is my upset. I think Buffalo's got something for it defensively. Take the Denver game out of the equation because Denver just quit after the first quarter. If Miami wants to be the big dog in the NFC East, they're going to have to take Buffalo out. If the game were in Miami, Buffalo always has a hard time in Miami, but it's in Buffalo. Different beast, different defense. Still don't know if Jalen Waddle's going to be back for the Dolphins. Bills all around, pass defense, run defense, they're just solid. I think they slow Miami down enough. They put pressure on Tua. And again, it's not going to be a blowout, but I do think Buffalo wins the football game.
Yeah, now this is interesting because the Bills are a 3-point home dog in this one, and always beware the home dog. And Josh Allen is going to want to show that he's still that MVP type player, and we'll see if they're able to get Tua off the spot, because we know Tua, if you give him pressure, he's going to make mistakes. He's had a very clean pocket so far in his first couple of games, and Teron Armstead, their left tackle, is playing very well. He's back from injury, and everything was going right for the Dolphins. I just want to kind of see what happens when everything's off schedule. So right now, I'd probably say, though, Miami's going to find a way to win this game. They just have too much explosiveness in terms of Tariq Hill. So my lean right now, it's very early in the week, but I'd probably say I'm leaning towards the Dolphins in that one. Another game I want to kind of highlight is we have the Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles. We talked about that this is an NFC East game, and the Eagles lost to the Commanders last year in a situation where they better not underestimate him, because I talked about the Eagles' defensive line, but the Commanders have a very good defensive line as well. Payne, Allen, Sweat. Chase Young is finally starting to turn a corner, looks healthy, he's getting after the quarterback. And then the Eagles, yes, they have a very good run uh, offense, but can they pass block and keep that pressure off of Hurts? We know Hurts had the 2 interceptions, and if Swift's not there, is he able to get the play action and other plays that he's able to drive the ball down the field to Brown and Smith and the rest of those guys? So this is an interesting one. Philadelphia in this one they're an 8.5 point home favorite. So I think that's a lot of points. So if I was betting this one, I'd probably take Washington points, because typically, NFC East game is going to be a close battle. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Washington can't play much worse than they did against
Yeah.
Buffalo. Do you know what I mean? So, home, Philadelphia at the link. Do I think Washington will play better just because it's an NFC East opponent? Yeah, Sam Howell can't make the mistakes. Their offensive line can't allow 9 sacks. Do I think Philadelphia will blow them out? Probably not. Do I think they'll cover? I do. So I think this game's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of Philadelphia 30 and probably Washington like 14, 16, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think the Eagles win this one, but I'm a little leery of that 8.5. And if you can tease it down. So I know that's gambling talk for some of our folks that may not be gamblers, but uh, another game that's kind of interesting to me. You have the New England Patriots. They have Belichick, and he wants to keep this thing rolling. So they're at the Dallas Cowboys, who are a wounded team. It's the Fox national game at 4:25 on Sunday. Um, Dallas is a 7 point favorite in this one. We'll see how they're able to see if they're turning around. They always seem to kind of play better at home. Dak seems to play better there, and I think the key is going to, do they get Tony Pollard rushing the football and that offensive line, who's not they're not what they used to be as well. And then Dak's got to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb and take care of a Patriots defense that's kind of vulnerable. So it's an interesting one to watch. Dallas is a 7 point favorite. So what do you think?
So I said earlier in the show that Dallas played Arizona, and the teams that they're supposed to beat the hell out of, they seem to wind up losing to. But then they normally follow it up with a game like this, where people are
Right.
expecting this game to be close. And what's probably going to happen? Dallas is probably going to put together an all-around effort, and they'll probably wind up winning the game at home, home cooking, national game. I just, do I think that they're going to, win 40-0? No. Do I think Dallas will win? I'm looking at this as maybe like a 27-17 game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good watch, and I think Dallas will win, and they'll probably cover that number, and everybody will think, all right, Dallas is ready to roll again. And like you said, they're up and down, and we'll see where they go from there.
Yep.
The interesting game also you got to highlight is, all right, the international series. Here we go. We're back over in London, and it's the Falcons against the Jaguars. The Jaguars, we didn't talk about that game earlier, but they just had an awful effort against the Houston Texans. Trevor Lawrence is now 1-4 versus the Texans. I just think they kind of have their bugaboo. And when you look at the Falcons, they didn't really show up against Detroit. Desmond Ritter is a total game manager, and he played terrible against Detroit. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of game travels over to London. I tend to think that the Jaguars, who are a 3-point favorite, are going to win this one. It's a home game for them technically, and they need this as a get-right game. And obviously, I talked about Desmond Ritter and his struggles. I think Lawrence gets right, and he gets the ball to Kirk and Ridley and the rest of his guys. Now, it's a 9:30 a.m. start on ESPN Plus, so definitely it's fun. You wake up and you start watching the games, and I think that the Jaguars are going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I mean, 1-2, you look like hell. Atlanta you sort of know what they have. Like you said, Ritter, game manager. They've got some studs at running back. Receiving core is still a little suspect. But Jacksonville, I mean, everybody's been hyping on you like all preseason, and you've sort of you looked okay the first game. Last two games, you haven't looked so good. So they have to show it to me this game because they don't want to start 1-3. So I think, again, probably closer than the experts think, but I think Jacksonville will pull away late.
Yeah, and as we close it, we'll look at the Sunday night football game. We were talking about it earlier. The Chiefs, this game looked sexier when Rodgers was going to play, but it's the Chiefs going to the New York Jets, and the Chiefs are a 9.5-point road favorite. So, I tend to think the way Wilson's playing that, yes, the Chiefs will win this one and win big.
Yeah, I just think that, there's just too much uncertainty. There's too much going on in New York. I always get nervous about these games because just they might use everything as a rallying cry, and I think they might play the Chiefs tough for a half. I think the Jets defense will keep it close for a half, but I just think that there's just too much offensively for Kansas City, and not enough people are talking about the Chiefs defense, and I think the Chiefs defense will step up. They know what game plan that they'll have. I think they'll implement it well, and I think, are Kansas City going to blow them out exponentially? No, but I do think they win the football game.
Yeah, and we'll see, and I appreciate you being on, and another great episode of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Thanks to Ryan, thanks to Angel for producing the show, and we're going to work on getting a car line so we can get some feedback, and also maybe have one of my insider guests each week. So we'll work on that for you, and we'll see if Taylor Swift continues to be with Kelsey on Sunday Night Football. We'll see if she's in the owner's box again, and everybody's talking about her. But the season, I think, has been very exciting, and I think it's just going to continue. And we're going to sort this thing out. We'll find out who wants to step forward. And I want everybody to be mindful, though. It's still very early in the season. Last year, Jacksonville started out 2-6, and then they turned around and they made the playoffs and won a couple games. So stay tuned. Enjoy the games. Thanks for listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Broad Street South Network.